Welcome to today's episode of Charting Tracks. First, here's our annoying legal disclaimer. All views expressed are our own and do not indicate the opinions of any employers or clients for whom we work. The recommendations or advice given in this podcast may or may not be right for you, depending on the circumstances. Please bear this in mind before taking any action. Your hosts for this episode are Ben Hennessy-Garside, who is a voice coach, a multi-instrumentalist, music composer and producer, previously was an A&R scout at Faith and Hope Records, and is currently a lecturer at Leeds Conservatoire, where he teaches voice on the popular music course, and he is a father of two. Chris O'Gorman is a digital marketing strategist. He previously was digital manager at Sony Music and former head of digital at Capitol Records UK. He runs a digital marketing agency and he works on artist development, branding and marketing. My name is Amir Yaqub. I am a record producer, a Grammy Award-winning audio engineer. I'm co-owner of Bison Productions, which is a facility in East London, which provides music production and podcast recording services. And I am director of Garnish Music Production School in London. This is episode 7 of Charting Tracks, which is part 2 of a conversation on music creation and composition. We hope you enjoy it.
Ben, you said the TAMTIFTL.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is actually.
Yeah, so neither do I. I've been waiting for a big reveal until this episode because Ben is going to change my life in a way that he doesn't even know yet. I'm going to take this and I'm going to apply it to every single session that I do in the future.
Well, I hope so. No, this is something that I got this from when I was doing my BTEC National Diploma in popular music. I had a great lecturer actually, and he had the thing he called it RAMTIFT, and so I've altered that a little bit and updated it and edited it just for the way I worked, but it's working on his foundations, and it's basically just a way of analyzing music. And what I mean by analyzing is taking music and breaking it into kind of constituent parts, like smaller little pieces that we can then take a look at. It's not comprehensive. There are things that kind of sit between categories, right? But nonetheless, as a way of listening, and kind of, we talked a bit earlier about focus, a way of focusing our listening. It's a really useful frame. But the other thing as well, in arrangement and composition, we might also think about our music in these ways. And we've talked a bit about blocks and overcoming blocks. Again, like if the creativity is not just flowing, you might pick one of these categories and say, right, well, I'm gonna make a change in that. Yeah. So it's almost like a way of viewing music from a few different angles. So I'll explain each of them if you want. So it's TAMTIFTL, right? It's a terrible acronym. And you'll find out why it's a terrible acronym.
I keep saying it as TAMTIFTL.
TAMTIFTL, no. No, it's important you get it right.
I need to get it right.
The right way around, yeah.
So,
so just spell that out for the listeners there.
So it's TAMTIFTL.
Okay, and we'll get a graphic of this and all this kind of stuff made up as well.
Right. So the first one's timing.
Timing.
Okay, and underneath that, so if you imagine that timing is the header, right?
Yep.
That's the title, and then underneath that, there's a whole list of other things. So you might find tempo, or you'll find tempo in there. You'll find time signature in there. You'll find rhythm in there. There's also some dynamics stuff in there because we're talking about accents. Yeah, so, if you've got a bar of 4/4, okay, fine, but which beats are you accenting within that bar of 4/4?
Yeah,
and that's a timing timing concern, even though you're talking about dynamics. It's actually there's a timing component.
Yeah, of course, because that contributes to the groove.
Absolutely, yeah. It's the groove. So yeah, groove is another thing that you'd stick underneath timing. The next one is harmony. Right.
I see what you did there.
So
harmony.
I told you, I told you it was awful. But harmony, yeah. So if you put a little H in front of the second A for the acronym, it's harmony. Yeah.
Wicked.
And what comes under harmony is everything basically to do with chords.
Chords, yeah.
Right. So there are a whole bunch of questions you might want to answer, like are the chords, are they basic triads? Are they sus chords? Are they extended chords? Are they sevenths? Are they ninths? Are they are there any add nines? Are there any slash chords? So there's all of those kind of questions. But then you've also got the question of maybe you're in and this is where there's a place of kind of overlap. So maybe you're in a major key, and then which chords in the key? Is it 1, 5, 6, 4, 2, 3, chord 7? There's all that kind of stuff. So all of that stuff would be seeded under harmony. So of course the chord order and the chord construction would sit under there. Yeah, you might throw in this as well, kind of tonal or atonal chords. Yeah, so or dissonance and consonance. Right. After that, then melody is, so TAM is melody, right? What's happening melodically. Now you can apply a lot of the same principles for melodic thinking to bass line thinking. Is the melody line ascending? Like, is it rising as it's moving along, or is it descending? Is it coming down in pitch as it progresses along? Same with the bass line. You might throw melodic rhythm. This is another place where timing and melody, there's an overlap when you're thinking about melodic rhythm. Because if you say got an ascending melodic line moving up in pitch, that's only one. The pitch is only one part of the way of analysing and thinking about melody. The other is, what's the gap between each note? How long does each note last for?
Yeah, is it staccato? Is it legato?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's a rhythmic component too. Next one would be T. TAMTIFTL. Yeah, so we're talking in T about tonality.
Tonality. Cool.
Tonality. So again, and this is like the overall thing. So it encompasses harmony and encompasses melody, and it encompasses any bass lines, any riffs, and anything that's got pitched musical information in. So that you'd be thinking about, is it atonal? Is it tonal? Is it diatonic? Yeah, or is it modal, or is it like, are we dealing with straight majors or minors? What type of minor, if it's a minor? Is it harmonic minor? Is it melodic minor? Is it a natural minor? If it's modal, which mode is it? And if it's completely atonal, like there's no key signature or no, all of these questions sit and are seeded underneath this tonality section. Next one would be I for instrumentation / timbre. Cool. Now, I like to distinguish. I kind of put them together because what you're dealing with here is like the So what's the instrument or the sound that you're going with, right? Now, if you take instrumentation, then that's, well, what instrument is it? Is it a guitar? Is it a keyboard? Is it a voice? Is it drums, bass? Like what is it? But then you can zoom in on this stuff, right? So if you're going to ask the question of whether it's a guitar, well, okay, what type of guitar? Is it electric or acoustic? Okay, right. And you might decide it's electric, right? Okay, so it's electric. So if it's electric, well, what type of electric guitar is it? Like, is it a Gibson Les Paul? Is it a Fender Strat? Is it a Fender Telecaster? Is it some kind of spiky Ibanez thin sounding thing? Like what? So you can really go down on the instrument, but then there's also the timbre, which is kind of how the instrument's played, right? So Is it muted? Is there distortion on it? Is there reverb on it? These things kind of live in the sort of timbre land. What I suppose, like scientifically, we're talking about the harmonic series and which in the harmonic series are present and to which degrees. Yeah, we're talking about the kind of waveform shape,
of course,
rather than the pitch.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's all the stuff that lands in this area. You know, other production considerations, I suppose, so like how much warmth, quote unquote, is there in the sound? Like how much bass frequency content is there in it? How much middle is there? How much treble? Yeah. All of these kind of questions live under there. So that's that, and then form/structure. So that's like it's a bit like timing, but we're talking about things on like a macro level as far as the song's concerned. So like, what's the structure? Yeah, is it intro, verse, chorus, middle eight, chorus, whatever? Is it a little bit more? Is it less kind of poppy? And you might then be talking about things in terms of A sections and B sections, or like if it's you know, if it's jazz, you might be talking about when the head is compared to when everyone's getting their impros. But it's that kind of like macro structural stuff. And then last but not least.
Oh, you've got a T and you've got an L.
Oh, I've got T and an L, yeah, sorry. TAMTIFTL. Yeah, so what's the final T? This is why I need it. No, but this is why I need it, because it's like... so we've got tonality, we've got instrumentation, we've got... texture. So texture. So you've got your form, and then there's a question of, well, which sounds, like which instruments, which timbres are being played and when? Yeah? And then, you know, within a given bar. So if you take loads of different sounds and you stack them all on top of each other, you could describe that as being quite a thick texture. Yeah. Whereas,
yeah, of course,
the thing that we've been talking about before. So in the choruses of Hallelujah, Jeff Buckley gets kind of thinner.
Yeah. Whereas
Leonard Cohen has got a nice thick texture in his choruses. In that, so it's like how many sounds are you throwing and chucking in and stacking up on top of each other in any given moment?
Yeah, of course.
And then the final one, L, is lyrics. So and again, there's some spillover here, because obviously when you write a lyric, even if the intention is to rap the lyric, there's still a kind of implied melody there. So just then, when I said there's even a kind of implied melody there, do da do da do da do da do da. Does you hear that? There's like a melodic shape to what I've just said. Do do da do do da do da do da.
And because of that, there are people who are musicians on Instagram who take their instruments and they play along to people's melodic talking. So like there's a guy called Chris Cornell who does it on keys, and a bass player called Mono Neon who does it on bass.
Who does the Cardi B ones?
That's Chris Cornell. Yeah.
That's genius.
Okay, so there is some overlap. So in the act of writing a lyric, you're not just writing a lyric, right?
Of course.
You're also writing rhythmic information, because there's an implied
rhythm in there.
Rhythm in it, yeah. So the gaps beneath the words, certain words are going to be accented or not, and there's an implied rhythm, but there's also an implied melody too. But the other thing with lyrics is also there's questions around meaning, and there's a way of playing into, like, say, the branding stuff that we've talked about, or the kind of wider. There's stuff that you get from lyrics that you can't get from other musical elements, because
of course,
you know, there's a different.
There's much more of a direct message, even if you're covering it up with metaphors and all that kind of stuff, right?
Well, it's language. So for somebody, so for people like us who kind of quite talky types. I mean, we're on a podcast after all, right? That yes, there's quite a bit of meaning is carried in a lyric, perhaps. I mean, some fans, like, they don't really care about lyric. They don't remember the lyric. They, the meaning doesn't really matter. They just, they just want to dance, and all the lyric is just a kind of carrier for melodic and rhythmic information, and the meaning in the lyric doesn't matter. But for you, Chris, certainly as a singer songwriter, like that lyric, there's a whole world of exploration that you can have. It's a whole play space for musical artists that's separate from just the music.
Yeah, definitely.
So
that's TAMTIFTL.
That's TAMTIFTL, right? So there's an overview of it all, right?
I think personally that's something we need to unwrap in a podcast episode of its own.
We could spend an entire podcast on each one of those.
Yeah,
pieces.
Exactly. I mean, that's just, this is the wonderful thing about it as well, because it goes so music. When we talk about creation of music, it goes so deep, doesn't it? I mean, even when you were talking about instrumentation and the choice of instrumentation, you might not even choose the instruments. You might choose a sample of an old 60s record or whatever.
Yeah.
And, that choice there is bringing so much to everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the thing. Each of those components, you can change it up, and that will represent one of those changes that we were talking about, right? You might shift from, so I mean, let's pick one. Let's go with, I don't know, tonality, right? So you might shift from a diatonic scale into something atonal, right? Keep the kind of basic musical shape, but shift a couple of notes around in the key signature, so it's not even in a key signature like a traditionally recognizable key signature anymore, and you're going to get a shift. It could be even an entirely new piece of music, and the two things may need to be kept totally separate. But and you can do the same with the others, right? So rhythmically, well, what do you do? Well, maybe you introduce a time signature change or a tempo change, or you keep the same time signature, but you just change the rhythm slightly. The melodic line, maybe the melodies have been largely ascending, like rising up. Well, flip them on the head. Try and make them descending for a section. Or there's what it means is if you're going, right, I need some change. The second verse is just, there's a bit flat. There's nothing moving. If you can reach to TAMTIFTL and go, oh, I'm going to pick one of these components and I'm going to change it. It represents a route out if you're kind of you're banging your head against a brick wall of what to do next.
Yeah, and I suppose that's what creates the the motion in the composition in your song, and I suppose there were some of the techniques that you would think of creating with. Well, one of the big ones that always is one of the big ones that is always something that I'm thinking about is tension and release. And I'm sure you can all think of a song which has a lot of tension and a lot of release in it, or some points of tension and release where this kind of like anxiety is building up inside of you because you're like, whoa, what's going on here? And then all of a sudden it's like and that's being built off any one of those TAMTIFTLs, or many of them are happening at the same time. But the journey is never really something that you want to keep static and linear. You want to take someone somewhere in whatever way you can. Something that you'd mentioned earlier, Ben, particularly, which I thought was quite interesting, and is probably, and there's a TED talk about this and all of this kind of stuff, is repetition in music. And the sense of familiarity that you get from repetition, and that turning your song into a bit of an earworm and all this kind of stuff. But obviously, if you're just constantly repeating stuff, you're boring people, aren't you?
Yeah.
You got to know when to pull it back and drop it back in and all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah. I have this thing. Called Conspansion, which is like if you take contraction and expansion, and they're two kind of paradoxical. You know, they're opposed to each other, right?
Right.
But if you think about the process of managing contraction compared to expansion and put them together in a package as a thing to think about, then conspansion is it's a word that just kind of covers it, right?
Process, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like as you're moving through a song, there may well be a sense of the thing contracting. Yeah, and there may be a sense of expansion and opening out, right? You might use I'm thinking from a production context, you might use stuff like reverbs and room sizes,
Yeah,
and delay lengths and stuff to kind of to open something out or shrink it back. But then there's also a whole heaps of other ways of you doing that. But the point is that if something's contracting or expanding, what it is doing is changing.
Yes, of course.
And I find kind of often there's just the right balance between repetition and then some kind of act of conspansion, which it's like, can you repeat the thing whilst also changing it at the same time? And that's like the balancing act, you know. Maybe you get you take the hook, right, and the hook is repeated with a few of the notes missing, so it's slightly, you know, that's an example of contraction. Yeah, you've removed a few bits; it's kind of getting smaller, but you're playing it then on a different instrument, maybe in a different key or in a different octave. But there's a sense of the thing being repeated and rerun and reheard, and it changing simultaneously. And holding both of those things simultaneously is it's a tricky thing to do, but when you do it, that can work really nicely. So balancing conspansion and repetition is an important thing.
You know, the song that really makes me think is a song from Frozen, the musical, you know, the Let It Go. It really does that. Just piano vocal, and it just builds, and then it's the tension. Talk about building tension, and it does that in the chorus into the in the verse into the pre-chorus, and then into the chorus. It literally expands at that point, and then it also releases, because it's then musically releases also the lyrics "Let It Go." If it actually releases even in the lyrical content, it's and then it contracts again for the next verse. So it's, as you were saying that, I could just hear the melody in my head playing, and
I'll probably hear it for the rest of the day now. So thank you.
It's one of the, I mean, there's a reason that's such an insanely successful song.
Well, this is true. Yeah. This is true. It's ticking all the boxes, isn't it?
Yeah. The other thing about this, by the way, is, and there's some kind of reasons for this, for like why it works, right? There are two more words I've invented here as well, right? There's a Seboredity, right, which is a blend of security and boredom. When we're hearing the same thing over and over again, we feel secure. Like, human beings like to feel secure. We like to feel like we know where we stand, right? It's the reason why I suppose it's the reason why genre or style, even as a concept, exists, right? People want to feel that there's a musical tradition. There's something repeatable that they're listening to and that they're into and that they're interested in. And there needs to be something familiar about it, right? So it's secure. But the reason why I've squished this board into the middle of the word, Seboredity, is because that can also lead to boredom.
Exactly.
And so there's that sense of sameness that might elicit a sense of security, but it might also elicit a sense of boredom, right? So there's like positive and negative poles of that same thing.
Absolutely.
And then there's another word, which is Anxitement, right? And so if you take change, right, so and introduce it to people, they might feel really excited about the change. It's like something fresh, it's something new, it's exciting, like it's energizing. There might be too much of that energy, or it might flip into a negative form, which is they might then get anxious.
Yeah.
And so too much change can cause people to be anxious, right? And again, there are entire genres that are designed for people that can cope with quite a lot of that anxitement energy in the music, right? If you've got, I'm thinking about kind of like maybe like prog styles or something. There's time signature changes, key signature changes, virtuosic music. Like it's just really, really, really busy.
Freeform jazz, something like that.
Yeah,
It's-
exactly.
Right. Yeah, sure. And so there are some people just like can deal with that anxiety, and it doesn't flip them into anxiety. They just feel kind of excited by it. Like it's just enjoyable for them. But then there are a whole heap of other people, probably the majority of people, who are like, no, I can't be dealing with this level. It just makes me feel anxious. I feel tense listening to it. Like I just don't want to be listening to it. So, yeah, getting the right level of Seboredity and the right level of anxiety, and being aware that you might be tipping your audience either into boredom or a nice solid sense of security, like they might feel safe with you, or you could be tipping them into a real deep sense of excitement or a sense of anxiety, and that you've got this kind of balancing act to take into consideration when you're making your music.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that thing about tension and release, of course, is it's like build and 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 build. And that's the right blend. If you're feeling that sense of tension, it's like it's almost anxiety, but there's also enough repetition that you're kind of held. Like you can't move anywhere, and yet there's this energy inside you. And then when the release comes, it's like,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
simultaneously you can move again. Yeah, also you can settle back down into your chair. It's like there's a kind of weird flip reversal thing taking place.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is like this is the wonderful thing about composition, really, isn't it? Is that you're allowed to take your listeners wherever you want to take them. You can create a space for them, which they hopefully will love. I think one song that really stuck out to me, there's always a song, whenever I hear people talking about music composition, there's always a song that sticks out to you. My one on this occasion, when you were talking, Ben, about all of this was Chandelier by Sia.
Right? Yeah.
Because, like, it's an epic journey in a pop song. And when you talked about things like using more reverb and less reverb, if you hear the chorus, it's bloody huge on that song. And there's loads of reverb. And when you come back into verse 2, you notice the difference because they don't use much reverb there. It comes back to her solo vocal instead of layered vocals. And, you know, it's one example that I use quite often with my students when we're talking about mixing records and how we can... Obviously, a lot of it's built on the original production. Even if you take it one step deeper, it's the song, it's the composition, it's that composition just by itself where we reduce it to its very kind of like most stripped back form. This is what we call the Dolly Parton test, right?
It's bones, yeah.
So Dolly Parton, she would be in a studio with people and they'd be all producing records for whatever. And she'd take the guitar player outside and she'd say, come with me. Let's see if this song works.
Does it work? Just
here. And I think that's kind of sums up everything we've been talking about today, right? Because we've been talking about, you know, you can do so much and all of these things and all of these tools and look at all of the things you can do. But if your composition works and if the song works with just 2 instruments, you are going to the bank laughing, basically, because, you know, essentially you can play that song anywhere, anytime, and people are going to be like, yes, 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 you know? Chris, some of your favorite stripped back songs? I mean, there's got to be a Tori Amos song in there, right?
I mean, I don't know. It's not. Do you know what? Yeah, I mean, God, there's so many, but I think one of the songs from Tori Amos, I don't know if it's my favorite song, but it's one of the most compelling, is "Me and a Gun," and that is an a cappella song, and it's just the vocals and the melody is just so haunting. And then another one actually is. Bells for Her, where she took a deconstructed piano. They'd basically just been messing with this old upright piano and just playing with it, really deconstructing it, taking it apart to the point where it sounded like bells.
Yeah.
And in that song, actually, the really interesting thing about it is that she wrote it. Basically, she was just playing on it, and they weren't recording it at that point. She was just there tinkling away on it, and then all of a sudden, the engineer, it's Eric Ross, saw that she'd got into a bit of a sort of trance-like state, and he was like, "Ooh, something's about to happen," and just ran over and put in the DAT. This is back in the days of DAT recording. Put in the DAT tape and hit record, and basically then she wrote and performed the song, just the vocal and that deconstructed piano, just on the fly, just like that. And then when it was over, couldn't remember what she'd written, had to relearn the song to be able to perform it, because it just came like that in the fly. It's always one that really sticks out with me. Another one's Joni Mitchell, A Case of You. Just oh my god, what a song. Just,
yeah, man. Definitely.
We need to put together a playlist, don't we?
Yeah, we do actually.
100%.
Because,
100%.
but I'm just the thought of both of those examples, Chris. I'm getting like, just like, I just love that.
Obviously, we spoke about Hallelujah by Jeff Buckley, and that for me is just like it's just amazing. And I'm pretty sure you were the first person to play me that, Ben.
Same, yeah.
Well, what can I say?
Any other songs that come to mind that work on just like, just a guitar, vocal, or whatever?
I really like, there's Damien Rice's O album. There's a few on there. I'll pick one out for the playlist but it's that really dry, like dry vocal sound and quite close sounding record, and not very much going on kind of instrumentally, and there's a guy called Asghar. Now he uses drums and stuff, but the intro to this, he did a version of I think it was Heart Shaped Box. Again, I'll double check and dig that out, and we'll stick it on the playlist, but I'm pretty sure it's that. And he's got this very he uses his like a I suppose you would call it a falsetto sound to his voice, very thin, and like just begins on it with the piano. And comparing that to the original Nirvana song, there's a whole heap you can do by just toying with the arrangement, and listening to them back to back is something I'd recommend doing as well.
Yeah.
Both versions of that. I love the original too. Like,
I mean, some songs I would throw into this playlist would be my favorite Prince song, which is like really stripped back, and I actually saw him perform this on an encore in the O2.
Yeah.
It's Sometimes It Snows in April, which is just an absolutely beautiful song. Basically, any song that Donny Hathaway has done on just a piano, it will make it. Song for You, which wasn't actually his song. I think it was written by Willie Nelson. And there's another song he does called For All We Know, again, which I don't think is his song. And if we're thinking like someone more contemporary, there's a guy called Pink Sweats who I can't remember what the name of the song is. It might be called either I Want You or Honesty or something like that. Just an electric guitar and him. And again, he's using kind of like that very falsetto tone, lots of repetition in there. But just like, the fact that it's a record with just that voice and guitar. Jasmine Sullivan released a song last week. It's called Lost Ones, and it's just her voice and a guitar loop that's kind of like grungy guitar loop, and it's just like, there's something about, when we think of everything in composition, and then we just kind of like have these produced versions of stuff, which is amazing, but then we just bring it back to that song, and it's just.
That's why people love why the live lounge is such a popular format, because it's these songs that people know in these produced versions of them and love them, and then hearing them done in a different way, it's such a it always works. It's And again, it's the songs that people pick to do on that. Is you end up having a sort of different appreciation of the
Yeah,
song
and
in
I
the first
think
place. Yeah.
I think a song composition has so many personas. Like when we're thinking about archetypes, in a way, you can make, or you could think about a song that was not not made in a certain archetype, but someone takes it
Yeah. Yeah.
and puts it in a new archetype. That's really cool. Like the live lounge way of doing things. You could take a song that was a rebel song and turn it into a lover song.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's really interesting, actually. Yeah.
That's for me one of the beautiful things about composition and about artistry, is that you can do that. There's obviously loads of famous examples. Who was it that did a version of a Michael Jackson song?
Oh, yeah. Alien Ant Farm.
Alien Ant Farm. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. Smooth Criminal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, that was amazing.
It was a great version,
Such a good
actually.
song. It really is such a good song. It's a great song selection and great interpretation of it.
And I mean, this is it. It brings a whole new persona to that song, doesn't it? It's like...
Even in selecting that song and doing it in a kind of new metal version, you're introducing some of the like the jester.
Yeah.
Even in choosing that to take a pop classic and redoing it as like in a metal,
Definitely.
you're throwing in, you're making it funny where perhaps it wasn't before, and then smashing it out the park in terms of the performance and the arrangement as well. And like, his voice is great on that record.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you know who else did something like that? It was, I think Alanis Morissette did a version of Black Eyed Peas, My Humps. Do you remember
Really?
She did it. And the weird thing is, she did it in this really haunting, like sad kind of sort of acoustic version. But it was, even though it was sad and, quite, it's her sort of haunting vocals and stuff. Actually, the fact that she did it also, she was kind of doing it, like you said, as the jester, because it's sort of like, obviously this song is not supposed to sound like this, but it was quite funny / quite nice, actually. She sounded quite like actually quite a nice song.
Yeah.
It made you appreciate it in a very different way.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and this made me appreciate the original even more, even though I appreciate the cover. On Frank Ocean's first release, which was a mixtape called Nostalgia Ultra, he basically took the Eagles' Hotel California and he wrote a new song over it. But the instrumental was exactly that instrumental, right? And it made me appreciate Frank Ocean is an amazing artist and a generational artist. But I listened to it and I had to go back and listen to Hotel California again. And I was just like, this song is amazing. Frank Ocean, he didn't do anything instrumentally, but, he flipped it completely. He talks about marriage in America and relationships and all of this kind of stuff. And it's just...
So it's exactly the same as the original, like all the the double guitar solo and everything, and he's taken it and it's a fresh. Yeah, that'd make a great case study for what you can do with sure. That sounds great.
And there's elements of the melody that he's kept and stuff like that, but again, it's a different persona of the same song, isn't it? Because Hotel California, when I think about it, has dark undertones and it's been linked to quite a few conspiracy theories.
Well, anything good usually does get linked.
Exactly. But I suppose that's the persona it's always had for me until it was kind of brought back, and then it's kind of like listening to that song in a new way. It's wonderful because these creations, these compositions, when an artist puts them out into the world, they probably do it with an intention. So as an artist, as a creator, you're going to go and you're going to intend to be received in one way, but the interpretation is always down to the listener. And so your fans are always going to interpret your art in whichever way that applies to them. So if you're going through some sort of rough time in life, you might take a song that the artist intended to be a fairly happy song, because songs, sometimes we skew the meaning of them, and we might use that as a song which means a certain thing to us, but the artist actually meant it as something different. That's the wonderful thing about creating and composing, really, is that when you reach out to your fans, finally, they'll tell you what the song is all about. It's not really about what you thought it was about. You tried all these tricks to do this, that, and the next. And in fact, your listener has given it a completely different meaning in some cases.
Yeah, and then the song just lives on beyond you. It takes on its own life.
And yeah, that's the thing I find most magical thing about creations, compositions, that they mean something actually. They mean different things to different people.
Yeah.
So if you guys have anything else to say, just please say it now.
No, I don't think I do. I think that's a nice little note to end on, I think, actually. I quite like that.
So don't forget, guys, to wherever we are on the internet, to like and subscribe and follow and do all of that wonderful stuff. Thank you for listening today. We will be back with another episode next week where we will actually be talking about recording and the art of recording. But for now, we have been Charting Tracks team. Ben Hennessy-Garside, Chris O'Gorman, and myself, Amir. Thank you for listening. See you next time.
Bye.
Ciao.